But we're going to lead off the show talking about the latest news on the campaign trail, which is the Donald Trump campaign. Once again, battling these allegations from several women who have come forward in recent days, accusing Donald Trump of sexual harassment, sexual abuse. And let's remember how this all started here. Over last weekend, last Friday, we got a tape of Donald Trump in 2005 bragging, essentially, about how he uses his celebrity to abuse women, to be a sexual predator, to kiss them, to grope them. At the debate a few days later, he says he's never done any of that stuff. It was just locker room talk, him bragging about this stuff. And then a day or two later, we have women coming forward and saying he actually did do this stuff. So now we have the Trump campaign denying doing things that the candidate bragged about doing on a tape from 10 years ago. And we know that the Trump campaign sent letters asking for a retraction, asking for the New York Times to take down the story, threatening lawsuits against the New York Times if they didn't take down the story. And this came out yesterday. I want to read it in case listeners hadn't had a chance to hear it yet. This was the New York Times response to Trump alleging that the paper is committing libel against him by running these stories. And this is one of the best owns so far of the election. So it's worth reading here again, and even if you have heard it. New York Times lawyers say, quote, "The essence of a libel claim, of course, is the protection of one's reputation. Mr. Trump has bragged about his non-consensual sexual touching of women. He has bragged about intruding on beauty pageant contestants in their dressing room. He acquiesced to a radio host request to discuss Mr. Trump's own daughter as a piece of, you get it, multiple women not mentioned in our article have publicly come forward to report on Mr. Trump's unwanted advances. Nothing in our article has had the slightest effect on the reputation that Mr. Trump, through his own words and actions, has already created for himself." So we've had in a last few years, I feel like, made pretty significant strides in the issue of believing women when women come forward about sexual abuse claims, when they make allegations of men. We've made strides in recognizing a lot of the misogyny that exists through lots of facets of our society, political, business, whatever. And now we have a presidential candidate who sort of manifests all these evils that we've been trying to tackle over the last few years. And the question is this setting us back? Have we set back a lot of the progress we've made in recent years because of the way Donald Trump is conducting a presidential campaign? Well, I want to bring in our next guest here. Sarah Jaffe is the fellow at the Nation Institute. She's the author of a new book called Necessary Trouble, Americans in Revolt. The website for more information on that book is necessarytrouble.org. And Sarah joins me on the show right now. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Sam.
So the question I was sort of getting at the beginning here is, you know, I feel like there's been a lot of awareness pushed forward in recent years about the male-dominated society we live in, how men get away with a lot of things, particularly in cases of these rape cases. Brock Turner, in the sentences he received, the slap on the wrist, basically. Yeah. I'm wondering if a lot of this progress we've made in recent years is being destroyed by the fact that Donald Trump is running. And I know it's good that these allegations are out there and we can criticize him for it, but we also hear people like Donald Trump Jr. come out and say things like women don't belong in the workplace if they can't handle a little sexual harassment. We've heard Joe Scarborough say that he questions the timing of all this stuff. What is this doing to the progress we've sort of accomplished here?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. It's been a kind of a rough week if you are a woman who is alive and therefore probably has experienced something like this at some point in your life. It's been, you know, we've seen the joys of the internet erupting in a repeal the 19th hashtag because the map that showed that Donald Trump would win if only men voted. You know, the 19th Amendment being the one that finally gave women the right to vote 100 years ago or so. Not that much time at all, really. It's fine. We should just go back all the way to, you know, 1910 when women couldn't vote. Then everything would be great. That's about how far back these people actually want to set us, right, when we're talking about setting things back. And, yeah, I don't know. There's there are two questions, and we've seen the same thing when we're talking about Black Lives Matter. Is racism getting worse? Is sexism getting worse right now, or are we just seeing it because it's all being dragged into the light? I don't know if I can actually answer that because I haven't been polling Americans on the subject for the last 5 years.
Right.
So I probably can't tell you what the trend looks like. But, I think that it's both horrifying and kind of fascinating to finally see where the breaking point is for a lot of Republicans on this subject. Because people who are perfectly fine with Mike Pence wanting to force you to give birth and then have a funeral for your fetus if you have an abortion, but they're not fine with this. This is finally the breaking point. Or people who are perfectly fine with Donald Trump saying that all Mexicans are rapists, which, irony alert. But again, this is not fine because he's presumably talking about, assaulting white women finally. It's been so interesting to me to see where we draw a line as a society and say that this is unacceptable and that this person is not a respectable candidate for president.
Yeah, and kind of picking up on that, Trump has been regarded as someone who is tearing down all these political norms, which is true in a lot of ways. He has torn down a lot of political norms, but when it comes to powerful men running for office, being accused of abusing or harassing women, that's not new. That's not tearing down a political norm. We have a long history of political figures dealing with allegations of abusing women. And that's not just in politics, but that's in the business community, in education, and celebrity, whatever, you name it. So how do you highlight this current situation of Trump, making him out to be this unique figure in order to win the election, this evil monster, while also recognizing that he is a symptom of a much, much larger problem that exists throughout? Sarah? Looks like I have lost Sarah, unfortunately. We will try to dial her back as in the next few minutes. In the meantime, just kind of getting off of what this question we're talking about, and I don't want to do Donald Trump's work here and shift blame onto Bill Clinton about all this. We know that Donald Trump had this strategy when he was confronted with this tape to deflect things onto Bill Clinton. Here, let me just bring Sarah back on. And Sarah, you back with us?
I am. Sorry about that.
So
I don't know what happened.
I'm not sure when you dropped out, when in my question, but I was talking about how Trump is regarded as this candidate who breaks all the norms, defies political norms, which is true.
Yeah.
But when it comes to a man running for political office, dealing with allegations of harassment or sexual abuse, this isn't anything new. This is a long history of powerful men in politics dealing with this. So how do we balance the idea of being outraged by Trump, making, and even painting him as this unique evil force in order to beat him this election, while also recognizing that this is a systemic problem that goes back to many previous presidents, including Bill Clinton, who Donald Trump himself is more than happy to point out?
Yeah, I tend to fall on the end of the spectrum that says we shouldn't paint Trump as a unique evil force, but actually point out that these are social forces that have been around for a long time. If you read a little history, you can see exactly what was considered acceptable behavior and acceptable political speech that was horrifically racist and horrifically sexist, and just, this was considered completely normal. So, Donald Trump is the last in a long, we can only hope that he's the last. But he's part of a long line of people who prided themselves on being straight talkers. I think of George Wallace. We should question the way that powerful men treat women or other people in their lives, the way that anybody with power treats people that they have power over. This is certainly not. If anything, we've seen in the last week women talking about their experiences, realizing this is the furthest thing from unique in this country. And the fact that there are so many people willing to continue to support him just shows you exactly how not unique it is. That there are plenty of people, there are plenty of sitting governors like Paul LePage in Maine or Chris Christie who seem to think that this is all perfectly fine.
I mentioned earlier Joe Scarborough's comments about not believing women. He even said something like, if I had been abused by Donald Trump, I would have come forward immediately. What is it that Scarborough and others
Scarborough, wonderful.
Yeah. What is it that Scarborough and others who've said similar things don't get about women and men who've been abused or harassed, and how difficult it is actually to come forward?
Yeah, I mean, imagine that you are, for instance, I read this story at People by the reporter who said she was doing a story on Donald Trump and his new pregnant wife at the time, and he shoved her up against a wall and against her will. And she's working on a cover story for this magazine, and she's going, what do I do? She called her boss, told them about it, and was like, do you want to kill the story? And it's like, well, no, this is a huge byline, and maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And sometimes it takes hearing a lot of other people's stories to realize that actually this was that bad. You didn't imagine it, because all of society tells us that we're probably imagining it. It's not as bad as you think. It's just locker room talk, et cetera, et cetera.
Sarah, you're also known for covering a lot of lefty issues, in particular labor issues. You've got a new book coming out, Necessary Trouble, Americans in Revolt. What should people expect if they go to buy that book and read it?
Not very much about Donald Trump.
Thank God.
Yeah. I was just saying to somebody that I really hope that after this election is over, we can actually get back to talking about social movements and the way that sort of everyday people make political change, because elections tend to suck up all the air in the room, and this one has been more air sucking than most. So I wrote a book about social movements since the financial crisis in 2008, and the way that has changed this country. And so that covers everything from the Tea Party to Occupy Wall Street to Black Lives Matter to the Fight for 15 and the movement of workers at Walmart, the Chicago Teachers Union strike, the climate justice movement, and many other things that I think I probably forgot to list there. So there's a whole lot on that stuff and not very much about presidential elections.
Perfect. And that's extremely important things. We know that the left kind of had their say during Occupy, and even during the Democratic primary. A lot of lefty issues are on there that have kind of been fallen by the wayside during this general election. So it's important to get those back, and a good way to do that is to read Sarah Jaffe's new book coming out, Necessary Trouble, Americans in Revolt, fellow at the Nation Institute. Thanks so much for coming on, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.